Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, squinting at the massive starship engine before him. The cargo bay of Station Nexus buzzed with activity as dozens of species moved about their business. Humans, Zalari with their blue-scaled skin, the insectoid Kithara, and even a few of the rare Draknari, the dragon-like beings that most people only saw in holovids. The mechanic had been working on this Dragnari vessel for 3 days now. Their technology was far more advanced than human engineering, but Marcus had a gift for understanding how things worked. The other mechanics called him crazy for volunteering to work on alien tech, but he found it fascinating. Every species built their machines differently, reflecting their unique ways of thinking. "Chen, you done with that plasma conduit yet?" called his supervisor, Jake Morrison, from across the bay. "Almost," Marcus replied, running his scanner over the glowing blue tubes. "Just need to recalibrate the flow regulators." The Draknari who owned the ship, a imposing female named Thyra, watched from nearby. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales that shimmered between deep purple and black. Her wings were folded against her back, and her golden eyes tracked every movement Marcus made. "Your kind's methods are crude, but effective," she rumbled in, accented standard. "I did not expect a human to understand Draknari engineering." Marcus looked up from his work and smiled. "Everything has logic to it, ma'am. Just got to listen to what the machine is telling you." Thyra's head tilted, an expression Marcus had learned meant curiosity among her people. "Listen. Machines do not speak." "Sure they do," Marcus said, tapping the hull with his knuckles. "Hear that? That's the harmonic frequency of the support struts. When it changes, it tells you about stress fractures. And this hum from the plasma flow? It's running about 12% too fast for optimal efficiency." The dragon woman moved closer, her massive form surprisingly graceful. "Show me." For the next hour, Marcus explained the various sounds and vibrations that told him about the ship's condition. Thyra listened intently, occasionally asking questions that showed she understood far more about engineering than most people gave Draknari credit for. "Your species fascinates me," she said finally. "You adapt to technologies not your own, with remarkable speed." "We're good at that," Marcus agreed. "Humans have always been better at learning than creating." "Do not sell your people short, Marcus Chen. I have seen human innovations that surprised even our engineers." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the station's main entrance. Marcus looked up to see a group of Varrock soldiers, the gray-skinned military species that controlled several sectors, pushing through the crowd. They moved with purpose, their weapons visible but not drawn. "What do you think that's about?" Marcus asked. Thyra's expression darkened. "Nothing good. The Varrock have been expanding their territory again." The soldiers spread out through the cargo bay, clearly searching for something. Or someone. Marcus noticed Thyra tense, her claws extending slightly from her fingertips. A small sound caught his attention, a soft whimper from behind a stack of cargo containers. Marcus frowned and moved toward the noise, Thyra following. Behind the containers, huddled in a small space between crates, was a tiny Draknari. The hatchling couldn't have been more than a few months old, with scales that hadn't yet taken on the deep colors of adulthood. It was shivering, its large eyes wide with fear. "By the sacred flames," Thyra whispered. "A youngling." Marcus knelt down slowly, keeping his movements gentle. "Hey there, little one. You okay?" The hatchling looked between Marcus and Thyra, uncertain. It had a small collar around its neck that Marcus recognized as a slave marker. Illegal in most sectors, but still used by some of the more ruthless species. "Those soldiers," Thyra said grimly. "They are hunting escaped slaves." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. Slavery was supposedly outlawed throughout the galaxy, but enforcement was spotty. The Varrock, in particular, had a reputation for looking the other way when it benefited them. "We can't let them take a child," he said firmly. "If we interfere, they will arrest us both," Thyra warned. The Varrock do not distinguish between those who aid escaped slaves and the slaves themselves. Marcus looked at the frightened hatchling and made his decision. "Then we better not get caught." He reached into his toolbox and pulled out a thermal blanket, wrapping it around the small dragon. "Can you fly yet, little one?" The hatchling shook its head, too scared to speak. "That's okay. We'll figure something out." The Varrock soldiers were getting closer, their scanners sweeping the area. Marcus looked around desperately for a hiding spot, but the cargo bay was too open. "There," Thyra pointed to a maintenance shaft near the ceiling, "but neither of us can reach it." Marcus studied the shaft, then looked at the cargo containers. "Help me stack these." Working quickly, they built a makeshift ladder from the lighter containers. Marcus climbed up first, then reached down for the hatchling. Thyra lifted the young dragon up, and Marcus carefully pulled it into the maintenance shaft. "Stay here until the bad men go away," he whispered. "I promise you'll be safe." He had just climbed back down when the Varrock soldiers rounded the corner. "You there," the lead soldier barked at Marcus. "Have you seen any escaped property?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "Property? This is a cargo bay, pal. Lots of property here." The soldier's gray skin darkened with annoyance. "Do not play games, human. We are searching for an escaped Draknari hatchling. Sorry, haven't seen any kids around here." "Been working on this ship all day." The soldier turned to Thyra. "And you? Your kind would be more likely to notice one of your own young." "I have seen no hatchlings," Thyra replied coolly. "Perhaps your property has already fled the station." The soldier's scanner beeped as he swept it around the area. Marcus held his breath, hoping the thermal blanket would mask the hatchling's heat signature. "The readings are inconclusive," another soldier reported. "Too much interference from the ship engines." "Continue searching," the lead soldier ordered. "Check every container, every hiding spot." As the soldiers began opening cargo containers, Marcus heard a small sound from above. The hatchling was moving in the shaft. If it made too much noise... "Hey!" Marcus called out loudly, trying to cover the sound. "You got permits to search private cargo? Because my boss isn't going to be happy if you damage anything." "We have authority under Section 12 of the Galactic Security Act." The soldier snapped. "Yeah, well, my insurance company has authority under my contract. You break it, you buy it." The soldier was about to respond when a soft thump echoed from the maintenance shaft. Everyone looked up. "What was that?" the lead soldier demanded. Marcus's mind raced. "Probably the air recycling system. This station's getting pretty old." But the soldier was already pulling out a scanner designed to detect life signs. As he pointed it toward the ceiling, Marcus saw the readings spike. "There's something alive up there." "Could be maintenance rats," Marcus suggested desperately. "This place is full of them." The soldier was already calling for a ladder. In minutes, they would find the hatchling. Marcus looked at Thyra, who nodded almost imperceptibly. They both understood what was at stake. The Varrock didn't just enslave captured beings, they often killed those who helped escapees as an example to others. "I'll get it down," Marcus said, moving toward the stacked containers. "Stand aside, human," the soldier ordered, pulling his weapon. "We will retrieve our property." "Your property?" Marcus climbed onto the first container. "That's a child up there. Not property." "The law disagrees," the soldier said coldly. "Now move, or be arrested for interfering with official business." Marcus continued climbing. "You know what? I've got a better idea." He reached the shaft opening and looked in at the terrified hatchling. The little dragon was pressed against the far end of the narrow space. The thermal blanket clutched around its small body. "It's okay," Marcus whispered. "I'm going to get you out of here." He turned back to the soldiers below. "You want the kid? Come and take it." The lead soldier raised his weapon. "Last warning, human." Marcus looked down at the weapon pointed at him, then at Thyra's worried expression. He thought about the scared little dragon behind him, probably younger than his nephew back on Earth. "You'll have to go through me first." The soldier's finger moved to the trigger. So be it. The energy blast lit up the cargo bay as it struck Marcus in the chest. The impact threw him backward into the shaft opening, his body blocking the entrance as he collapsed. Pain exploded through his torso, but he managed to stay conscious. Behind him, he heard the hatchling cry out in distress. "Marcus!" Thyra roared, her voice echoing through the bay. The The soldier prepared to fire again when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed as the emergency systems activated. "What is that?" one of the soldiers asked nervously. The station's intercom crackled to life. "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessel approaching at high speed. Repeat. Unknown vessel approaching." Through the cargo bay's massive windows, Marcus could see something that made his blood run cold despite his pain. A ship was approaching the station. Not just any ship, but a massive Draknari dreadnought that dwarfed everything else in the area. The vessel was easily a kilometer long, its hull covered in scales that seemed to shift and move in the light. Weapon ports along its sides glowed with barely contained energy. "By the void," one of the soldiers breathed. "That's an Imperial dreadnought." Thyra's expression had changed completely. Where before there had been careful control, now there was something like awe mixed with terror. "No," she whispered. "It cannot be." The dreadnought moved with impossible grace for something so large, sliding through space like a living creature. As it approached the station, Marcus could see smaller ships emerging from its docking bays, sleek fighters that moved in perfect formation. The station's commander came over the intercom again. "This is Station Nexus Control to approaching Dragnari vessel. You are entering regulated space. Please state your intentions." 1C43. With hard.com tension. With hard C4. With hard C4, the response came not through the comm system, but as a voice that seemed to echo through the station's very hull. It was female, powerful, and carried an authority that made everyone in the cargo bay freeze. "I am Ashereth, Empress of the Draknari. I have come for my child." Marcus felt the temperature in the bay drop several degrees. Even wounded, he recognized the name. Every spacer in the galaxy knew of the Dragon Empress, the ruler of one of the most powerful species in known space. The Varrock soldiers looked at each other in panic. Their gray skin had gone nearly white. "The Empress?" the lead soldier stammered. "But that's impossible. She hasn't left the Dragnari homeworld in decades." Thyra had dropped to one knee, her head bowed. "She has come," she said reverently. "The mother of all dragons has come." Marcus tried to sit up, wincing as the movement sent fresh waves of pain through his chest. The hatchling behind him was making small, whimpering sounds. "What does she mean, her child?" the soldier demanded. But his weapon was now shaking in his hands. The answer came as the dreadnought settled into position above the station. Its shadow fell across the cargo bay. And through the windows, Marcus could see smaller ships detaching and heading for the docking bays. 3 minutes, Thyra said quietly. "It has been 3 minutes since this human took a weapon blast to protect one of our young. 3 minutes since he placed his life between a child and those who would harm it." She looked directly at the Varrock soldiers. "And now the Empress herself comes to see what manner of beings would threaten her offspring." The lead soldier's weapon clattered to the floor. We didn't know. The slave belonged to a private contractor. We were just following orders." "Tell that to her," Thyra said, pointing toward the docking bay entrance. The massive doors were opening, and through them came a procession that made everyone in the cargo bay fall silent. First came the Imperial Guard. Draknari warriors in armor that seemed to be made of living flame. They moved with deadly precision, clearing a path. Then she entered. Ashereth, Empress of the Draknari, was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. She stood nearly 10 feet tall. Her scales a deep crimson shot through with veins of gold. Her wings, when partially spread, cast shadows across half the bay. But it was her presence that truly overwhelmed. An aura of power and ancient wisdom that made it hard to breathe. Her golden eyes swept the cargo bay, taking in every detail. When her gaze fell on Marcus, bleeding and barely conscious in front of the maintenance shaft, something changed in her expression. "Who," she said, her voice carrying the weight of stars, "has harmed the one who protected my child?" The Varrock soldiers tried to back away, but found their path blocked by Imperial guards. The lead soldier raised his hands in surrender. "Your Imperial Majesty," he babbled. "We were unaware of any connection. We were simply retrieving escaped property according to standard protocols." Ashereth's eyes narrowed. Property? The temperature in the bay seemed to drop even further. Frost began forming on the metal surfaces near the Empress. You call one of my people property? Marcus forced himself to speak, even though it felt like his lungs were on fire. The kid is safe. The Empress turned her attention to him, and Marcus felt like he was being examined by a force of nature. Human, she said, her voice softer but no less commanding. You protected one of mine at the cost of your own well-being. Anyone would have. Marcus gasped. No, Ashereth said firmly. Most would not. Most would have looked away, or calculated the cost too high. She moved closer, her massive form somehow managing not to seem threatening despite her obvious power. What is your name, brave one? Marcus. Marcus Chen. Marcus Chen, the Empress repeated, as if testing the sound. I am in your debt. She gestured to the maintenance shaft. Bring me my child. Thyra carefully climbed up and gently coaxed the hatchling out. The little dragon was still wrapped in Marcus's thermal blanket, its large eyes wide as it took in the assembled crowd. When Ashereth saw the collar around the hatchling's neck, her expression became terrible to behold. Who, she asked in a voice like controlled thunder, placed this abomination on one of mine? The Varrock soldiers were now visibly trembling. The lead soldier pointed a shaking finger at one of his companions. It was contractor Vex Hal. He runs salvage operations in the Outer Rim. We were just hired to retrieve his assets. Assets, the Empress repeated, and the word dripped with contempt. She reached out with one clawed finger and touched the collar. It crumbled to dust at her touch. The hatchling looked up at her and made a small, questioning sound. You are safe now, little flame, Ashereth said gently, her voice completely transformed when addressing the young dragon. You are home. She looked back at Marcus, who was fighting to stay conscious. Guards, see that this human receives the best medical care available on this station. His wounds are to be treated as if he were Draknari nobility. Your Majesty, one of the guards said hesitantly. The station's medical facilities may not be sufficient for such serious injuries. Then he comes with us, the Empress said without hesitation. Our medical bays will suffice. Marcus tried to protest. That's not necessary. Station medics can. I have spoken, Ashereth said firmly. You risked your life for one of mine. Your well-being is now my responsibility. She turned her attention back to the Varrock soldiers. As for you, the soldiers fell to their knees, begging for mercy. The Empress studied them for a long moment. You will return to your superiors with a message, she said finally. The Draknari Empire is hereby withdrawing from all treaties with any government that permits slavery. Any being found to be enslaving our people will face the full might of the Imperial fleet. She paused, letting that sink in. Furthermore, we are placing a bounty on this contractor Vex Hal. 1 million Imperial credits for his capture. Alive. His operation ends today. The lead soldier nodded frantically. Yes, Your Majesty. We'll carry your message immediately. See that you do. And soldiers? The Empress's voice took on a dangerous edge. If I discover that you have harmed any being for helping escaped slaves, I will consider it a personal insult. And I am not known for my forgiveness. The soldiers scrambled to leave, gathering their equipment and fleeing toward the exit. Marcus felt consciousness slipping away as medical personnel, both human and Draknari, rushed into the bay. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the young hatchling, safe in the Empress's arms, looking down at him with gratitude in its large, golden eyes. The little dragon's voice, clear and sweet, followed him into unconsciousness. Thank you, Marcus Chen. Marcus awoke to the sound of humming machinery and the soft glow of lights that seemed to pulse gently like a heartbeat. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. The last clear memory was of energy burning through his chest and a small dragon's frightened eyes. He tried to sit up and was surprised to find that the movement didn't bring the expected agony. In fact, he felt better than he had in years. Looking down at his chest, he saw that the scorched hole in his work shirt had been neatly repaired, and beneath it, his skin showed no sign of injury. "You are awake," came a familiar voice. "Good. The healers said you would recover fully, but I wished to see it for myself." Marcus turned his head to see Ashereth seated beside what he now realized was a medical bed aboard the Draknari dreadnought. The Empress looked somehow less overwhelming than she had in the cargo bay, though no less impressive. Her scales seemed to shimmer with their own internal light. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, struggling to remember proper protocol. Should he bow? Salute? I thank you for the medical care, but this really wasn't necessary. Ashereth studied him with those ancient golden eyes. "Are you so eager to leave our company, Marcus Chen?" "No, ma'am. I just don't want to be a burden. You must have important things to do." A sound escaped the Empress that Marcus realized was laughter, a warm, musical rumble. "Indeed I do. And speaking with you is one of them." She gestured around the medical bay, which Marcus now saw was far more advanced than anything he had ever encountered. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns. Medical devices that looked more grown than built monitored various readings. "Our healers tell me you should have died," Ashereth said matter-of-factly. "The energy blast caught you full in the chest at close range. It damaged your heart, collapsed one lung, and caused internal bleeding that should have killed you within minutes." Marcus touched his chest again, amazed. "But I feel fine now. Draknari medical science has had thousands of years to perfect the arts of healing. We can repair damage that other species consider fatal. But that is not why I saved you." "Oh?" Ashereth leaned forward slightly. "I saved you because of what you did. In 3 minutes, you made a choice that revealed the true nature of your character. You placed yourself between a predator and a child, knowing it would likely cost you your life." "Anyone would have done the same," Marcus protested. "No," the Empress said firmly. "They would not. Do you know how many beings passed by that cargo container? How many heard the little one's distress and chose to ignore it?" Marcus frowned. He hadn't thought about that. 47, Ashereth continued. 47 beings of various species saw or heard evidence of a child in distress and chose to continue about their business. You and Thyra were the only ones who stopped to help. "Thyra helped too," Marcus pointed out. "She's the one who suggested the hiding spot." "Yes, and she is being honored appropriately." "But you, Marcus Chen, you placed your body between a weapon and a child who was not even your own species. That is remarkable." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime, and a door Marcus hadn't noticed opened. Through it came the small dragon he had protected, now cleaned and wearing what looked like a child's version of Draknari formal wear, a small cape that shimmered with the same colors as the Empress's scales. "Zara wanted to see you," Ashereth said, her voice warming noticeably. "She has been asking about you since we brought you aboard." The hatchling, Zara, approached the bed cautiously. When she spoke, her voice was small but clear. "Are you better now, Marcus?" "The healer said you were hurt very badly." Marcus smiled, his heart warming at the genuine concern in the young dragon's voice. "I'm much better, thanks to your people's amazing doctors." "How are you doing, little one?" "I'm good." Zara's eyes brightened. "The Empress says I'm safe now, and that the bad people can't hurt me anymore. She also says, you're a hero." Marcus felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I'm not a hero, Zara. I just did what anyone should do." "But you got hurt protecting me," Zara said seriously. "That makes you a hero. The Empress told me so. And she knows everything." Ashereth's expression was amused. "The young ones have their own wisdom. Perhaps you should listen to her." Over the next few minutes, Zara chatted excitedly about life aboard the Imperial ship. She had her own room, with toys and books, and several of the crew had been assigned to help care for her. It was clear that the trauma of her enslavement was already beginning to fade under the warmth of being truly safe for the first time in her short life. "I want to learn to be an engineer like Marcus," Zara announced suddenly. "He knows how to listen to machines. That's magic." "Is it now?" Ashereth asked, glancing at Marcus with interest. "It's not magic," Marcus said quickly. "It's just experience. Every machine has its own voice, its own way of telling you what's wrong. You learn to hear it after a while. Show me, Zara said eagerly. Marcus looked around the medical bay and noticed a small maintenance panel near his bed. Well, let's see. He pressed his ear to the panel and listened carefully. Hear that high-pitched whine? That's the power regulator working a little harder than it should. Probably needs recalibration. Zara pressed her ear to the panel. Her small face scrunched in concentration. After a moment, she looked up with wonder. I can hear it. It's like it's singing. Exactly, Marcus said, pleased. Different machines sing different songs. When you know what to listen for, they tell you everything you need to know. Ashereth had been watching this exchange with growing interest. This talent of yours, she said to Marcus. How common is it among humans? Not very, Marcus admitted. Some folks have a knack for it, but most mechanics rely on instruments and diagnostic tools. Yet you can diagnose problems that our own engineers struggle with. The Empress mused. Thyra has been telling my technical staff about your work on her ship. They are impressed. Before Marcus could respond, another chime sounded, and Thyra herself entered the medical bay. The dragon woman bowed deeply to the Empress before approaching Marcus's bed. Marcus, she said warmly, I am glad to see you well. Your bravery has become the talk of the ship. It wasn't bravery, Marcus protested. It was just the right thing to do. Thyra exchanged a look with the Empress. You see? Ashereth said. No sense of self-importance. No expectation of reward. Remarkable. Actually, Thyra said, I came to discuss something with you, Marcus. With your permission, Your Majesty. Ashereth nodded for her to continue. My ship's engines have never run better since you worked on them, Thyra explained. The improvements you made have increased efficiency by 18%. Our engineers have been studying your modifications, trying to understand how you achieved such results with what they call primitive tools. Marcus shrugged. I just fixed what was singing out of tune. Yes, but how did you know what the correct tune should be? Our diagnostic systems showed no problems with the original configuration. It was a good question, and Marcus thought about it for a moment. I guess. I think about what the machine is trying to accomplish. Every part has a purpose, and when all the parts work together perfectly, they create a harmony. When something's wrong, it breaks that harmony. Ashereth leaned forward, clearly intrigued. You think of machines as musical instruments? In a way, yeah. A good engine purrs like a cat. A healthy power core hums like contentment. When something's wrong, the music changes. Armand. Like Worm, Zara had been listening intently. Can you teach me to hear the music too? I don't see why not, Marcus said. You've already got good ears. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another Draknari. This one, wearing the elaborate uniform of a ship's officer. Your Majesty, the officer said, bowing. We have received responses to your ultimatum. Several governments are requesting audience with you. Ashereth sighed. Politics, she said to Marcus. The price of power is constant negotiation. She stood, her full height impressive even in the spacious medical bay. Rest, Marcus Chen. When you are fully recovered, we will speak again. I believe there are matters we should discuss. After the Empress left, Thyra settled into the chair beside Marcus's bed. She likes you, Thyra observed. I think she's just being polite, because I helped Zara. Thyra shook her head. The Empress is many things, but she is never merely polite. If she says she wants to speak with you again, she has something specific in mind. Like what? I cannot say. But I will tell you this. In the past 2 days, while you have been recovering, the Imperial fleet has destroyed 3 slave operations and captured dozens of traffickers. Your actions have started something, Marcus Chen. Marcus felt a chill. I didn't mean to start anything. I just wanted to keep a kid safe. And that, Thyra said with a smile, is exactly why you started it. Over the next few days, Marcus recovered his strength while getting to know life aboard an Imperial dreadnought. The ship was like a floating city, home to thousands of Draknari and their families. Unlike human ships, which were designed purely for function, the Draknari vessel felt alive. Its corridors curved like organic passages, and the walls pulsed with gentle bioluminescence that created a warm, welcoming atmosphere. Zara became his constant companion during his recovery, eager to learn everything he could teach her about machines and engineering. She had a quick mind and an intuitive understanding of how things worked that impressed Marcus greatly. "She reminds me of myself at that age," he told Thyra one evening as they watched Zara practice with a simple diagnostic tool, always taking things apart to see how they worked. "The young ones adapt quickly," Thyra agreed. "The trauma of her captivity is already fading. In a few months, it will be nothing but a bad dream." Marcus was glad to hear it, but something had been bothering him. "Thyra, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How many others are there? Kids like Zara? I mean, still out there, still trapped." Thyra's expression grew somber. "Too many. Slavery is supposedly illegal throughout the galaxy, but enforcement is inconsistent. Some species look the other way if it benefits them economically, and the Dragnari just accepted that? What choice did we have? We are powerful, but we cannot police the entire galaxy. And direct intervention often leads to war, which costs more lives than it saves." Marcus thought about that. "But now things are different?" "Now," Thyra said quietly, "the Empress has a personal reason to act. Your sacrifice has given her something she rarely has: moral authority that even other species recognize. She can move against the slavers without being seen as an aggressor. Because I got shot protecting a kid? Because you proved that there are beings in this galaxy who will risk everything to protect the innocent, even beings who are not their own species." That evening, Marcus was cleared for full activity by the medical staff. He was examining one of the ship's secondary power cores, SEN, more out of curiosity than necessity, when Ashereth found him. "I thought I might find you here," she said, approaching through the engine room. "Thyra said you were drawn to our machinery like a moth to flame." "Sorry, Your Majesty. I know I shouldn't be poking around without permission." "You have my permission," Ashereth said. "In fact, I would like you to poke around more. My engineers are fascinated by your methods." Marcus looked up from the power core, wiping his hands on a cloth. "They could probably teach me more than I could teach them. This technology is incredible. Yet you found inefficiencies in our systems that we had missed for decades," the Empress pointed out. "Our efficiency ratings have improved across the fleet, simply by implementing your suggestions." "I just listen to what the machines tell me," Marcus said modestly. Ashereth studied him for a long moment. "Marcus Chen, I have a proposition for you." "Oh?" "The Draknari Empire is about to launch the largest anti-slavery operation in galactic history. We are going to dismantle every trafficking network we can find, starting with the ones that target our people and expanding from there." Marcus nodded. "That sounds like important work." "It is, and it will require ships, many ships, operating far from home for extended periods. Ships that must perform flawlessly, because the lives they save depend on it." Understanding dawned on Marcus. "You want me to help maintain your fleet?" "More than that," Ashereth said. "I want you to teach our engineers your methods. I want you to help us build ships that sing in perfect harmony, as you put it. And I want you to do it as my chief engineering consultant." Marcus stared at her. "Your Majesty, I'm just a mechanic from a cargo station. I'm not qualified for something like that." "You are the being who took a bullet to save a child," Ashereth said firmly. "You are qualified for anything I say you are qualified for." She moved closer, her presence both commanding and oddly comforting. "Marcus, your species has something that many others have lost. The ability to see machines not as tools, but as partners. You work with technology rather than simply using it. That perspective is invaluable." "And Zara?" Marcus asked. "What happens to her?" Ashereth smiled. "She would come with us, of course. She has expressed a desire to be your apprentice. Unless you object?" Marcus thought about the eager young dragon, about her quick mind and infectious enthusiasm. I'd be honored to teach her. Then you accept? Marcus looked around the engine room, at the incredible technology that hummed with life and purpose. He thought about the other children like Zara, still trapped and afraid. He thought about the difference he might be able to make. Yes, Your Majesty, I accept. Ashereth's smile was radiant. Excellent. Then, let me show you something that I think will interest you. She led him deeper into the ship, through corridors he hadn't seen before, until they reached a massive chamber filled with the most advanced equipment Marcus had ever imagined. Engineers worked at stations that seemed to grow from the floor itself, their tools integrated seamlessly with the ship's systems. This is the heart of our fleet, Ashereth explained. From here, we coordinate the engineering for every ship in the Imperial Navy. And this is where you will work. Marcus felt overwhelmed. Your Majesty, I don't know if I can live up to this kind of responsibility. You already have, she said simply. The moment you chose to protect Zara, you proved that you understand what truly matters. Everything else can be taught. As they toured the facility, Marcus met the engineering staff who would be working with him. To his surprise, they treated him with respect rather than skepticism. Word of his modifications to Thyra's ship had spread, and they were eager to learn his techniques. The human approaches problems differently than we do, one of them explained. Where we analyze data, he listens. Where we calculate optimal parameters, he seeks harmony. The results speak for themselves. By the end of the day, Marcus found himself with a quarters assignment, a schedule of ships to evaluate, and a team of engineers eager to learn from him. It was overwhelming, but also exciting. That night, as he settled into his new room aboard the Dreadnought, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. A week ago, he had been a simple mechanic working on a cargo station. Now he was the chief engineering consultant to the Draknari Empire, about to embark on a mission to free enslaved beings across the galaxy, all because he had chosen to protect a frightened child. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. When he opened it, he found Zara standing in the corridor, clutching a small, stuffed dragon. Marcus, I wanted to say thank you again for saving me. Marcus knelt down to her level. You don't need to thank me, Zara. I'm just glad you're safe. The Empress says we're going to save other kids like me. Is that true? That's the plan, Marcus confirmed. Zara nodded seriously. Good. No one should be scared like I was. She hugged her stuffed dragon closer. And Marcus? I'm glad you're going to teach me about machines. I want to help fix things, like you do. I'd like that too, Marcus said softly. After Zara left, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there were more children like Zara, waiting for someone to care enough to help them. The thought of what lay ahead was daunting, but also filled him with purpose. He thought about his nephew back on Earth, about the simple life he had left behind on Station Nexus. That life had been comfortable, predictable, safe. This new path would be none of those things, but as he watched the stars wheel slowly past, Marcus Chen knew he had made the right choice. Some things were worth taking a bullet for, and some songs were worth learning to hear. 6 months after Marcus Chen took a bullet to protect a hatchling dragon, the galaxy was changing. Standing in the command center of the Imperial Dreadnought Starfire, Marcus watched the tactical display showing the liberation of the Korvac mining station. 23 enslaved beings were being evacuated from the asteroid facility, while Draknari forces secured the area. Among the rescued were 4 more dragon hatchlings, 2 human children, and 17 members of various other species. Target neutralized, came the report from Strike Leader Vorth. All civilians secured. Minimal resistance. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. This was their 15th successful operation, and they were getting better at it each time. The key was speed and precision. Get in fast. Extract the slaves, and disable the operation before the traffickers could react or escape. Excellent work, Ashereth replied from her command throne. Begin extraction and evidence gathering. I want complete records for the tribunal. The Empress had changed in the months since their first meeting. She was still imposing, still radiated that aura of ancient power, but there was something else now, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere royal duty. She had found a cause worthy of her attention. "Zara, report," Ashereth called. Marcus turned to see his apprentice hunched over an engineering console, her young face serious with concentration. At barely a year old, Zara was already showing remarkable aptitude for technical work. Her small claws danced over the controls as she monitored the fleet's engineering status. "All ships reporting optimal performance," Zara announced proudly. "The Moonbreaker's plasma conduits are running a little warm, but within acceptable parameters." "Noted," Marcus said, checking his own displays. "We'll look at those conduits when we get back to base." Oh way, the sight of the young dragon working alongside seasoned engineers still amazed him. Draknari children developed quickly, both physically and mentally. Zara was already the size of a human 10-year-old, and her intellect was growing just as rapidly. "Marcus," Ashereth said, approaching their station, "I've received another request for consultation." Marcus looked up from his work. "Which government this time?" "The Terran Federation," Ashereth replied. "It seems your own species wishes to learn from what we've accomplished here." Marcus felt a mix of pride and nervousness. The Liberation Fleet had become famous throughout the galaxy, not just for their success in dismantling slave operations, but for the innovative technologies and tactics they employed. Marcus's engineering improvements had allowed the Draknari ships to operate longer and more efficiently than ever before. More importantly, their success had inspired other species to take action against slavery. The Galactic Council had finally passed comprehensive anti-trafficking legislation, and several major powers had contributed ships and resources to similar operations. "What do they want to know?" Marcus asked. "Everything," Ashereth said with amusement. "Your methods, our coordination techniques, how we've achieved such efficiency. Apparently, human engineers are particularly interested in your harmonic resonance theory." Marcus chuckled. That's what the academic types had started calling his approach. Listening to machines and treating them as living systems rather than mere tools. Several universities had offered him honorary degrees based on his work with the Draknari fleet. "I suppose I could write up some reports," Marcus said. "More than that," Ashereth replied. "They want you to address the Federation Engineering Council, in person." "Me? Give a speech to a bunch of Earth's top engineers?" Marcus shook his head. "Your Majesty, I'm still just a mechanic. Those people have doctorates and advanced degrees. And you," Ashereth said firmly, "have results. You've increased our fleet efficiency by 37%. You've developed maintenance protocols that have been adopted by 6 different species. Most importantly, you've shown that true understanding comes not from credentials, but from wisdom." Before Marcus could protest further, an alarm chimed softly. Zara looked up from her console with excitement. "Incoming transmission from Earth," she announced. "It's Admiral Santiago, from the Federation Fleet." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Admiral Maria Santiago was one of the most respected military leaders in human space, and also his sister's former commanding officer. "Put her through," Ashereth commanded. The main display shimmered, resolving into the image of a stern-faced woman in Federation navy blue. Admiral Santiago's graying hair was pulled back in regulation style, but her dark eyes showed the warmth that had made her legendary among her crews. "Your Imperial Majesty," Santiago said, offering a respectful bow. "Thank you for accepting our transmission." "Admiral Santiago," Ashereth replied graciously. "I trust the Federation is well?" "Indeed we are, thanks in part to the intelligence you've shared about trafficking operations in our territory." Santiago's expression grew serious. "Your Majesty, we've identified a situation that requires immediate attention." The display changed to show a star map with a red marker pulsing ominously. "The hegemony of Vax is conducting large-scale slave raids in the outer colonies," Santiago continued. "Our intelligence suggests they're targeting isolated settlements, places without strong defenses." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The hegemony was a collection of aggressive species known for their brutality. Unlike the smaller trafficking operations they had been shutting down, this would be a major military engagement. "How many potential victims?" Ashereth asked, her voice carefully controlled. Conservative estimates put it at over 50,000 beings across a dozen worlds, Santiago replied grimly. Most of them human colonists, but also Valdari refugees and Centauri mining families. 50,000, Zara whispered, her young voice filled with horror. Marcus put a comforting hand on her shoulder. The scale of suffering was almost impossible to comprehend. What is the Federation's position? Ashereth inquired. Santiago's expression grew frustrated. We're stretched too thin to mount an effective response. The hegemony is operating in disputed space, technically outside Federation jurisdiction. By the time we could assemble a task force and navigate the political implications, most of those people will be dead or worse. Marcus could see where this was heading. The Draknari Empire had the naval strength to take on the hegemony, but it would mean open warfare against a major power. You're asking me to commit my fleet to war, Ashereth said bluntly. I'm asking you to save innocent lives, Santiago replied just as directly. Your Majesty, what you've accomplished these past months has been extraordinary. You've given hope to beings across the galaxy who thought no one cared about their suffering. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. But more than that, you've shown us what's possible when we choose to act on our principles rather than our politics. Ashereth was quiet for a long moment, her golden eyes thoughtful. Marcus could almost see her weighing the implications, the military risks, the political consequences, the lives that hung in the balance. I will need to consult with my advisors, the Empress said finally. Give me 1 hour. After the transmission ended, Ashereth turned to Marcus and Zara. Well, what do you think? Marcus was surprised to be asked. Your Majesty, I'm not qualified to make military decisions. Perhaps not, Ashereth agreed. But you understand what it means to protect the innocent. Your opinion matters to me. Marcus thought about the children on those distant colonies, scared, helpless, waiting for someone to care enough to help them. He thought about Zara, and how small and frightened she had been when they first found her. Those people need help, he said simply. If we can give it to them, we should. Zara nodded emphatically. We have to save them. No one should be scared like I was, Ashereth smiled. Spoken like true heroes. Her expression grew more serious. But this will not be like our previous operations. The hegemony has military ships, trained soldiers. We will be risking not just our mission, but our lives. Then we'd better make sure our ships are running perfectly, Marcus said. Over the next hour, Marcus worked frantically to optimize the fleet's performance. If they were going into a real battle, every advantage would matter. He pushed the engines to their harmonic sweet spots, fine-tuned the weapon systems, and ensured that every critical system was singing in perfect harmony. Zara worked beside him, her small hands surprisingly steady as she calibrated sensor arrays and power distribution networks. She had learned quickly, and Marcus was constantly amazed by her intuitive understanding of complex systems. Marcus, she said quietly as they worked, are you scared? Marcus paused in his work. A little, he admitted. But sometimes being scared just means you understand what's at stake. The Empress says courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you are afraid. She's a wise woman, Marcus agreed. When they returned to the command center, they found Ashereth standing before the main display, looking out at the assembled fleet. Dozens of ships hung in space around them, sleek destroyers, massive cruisers, and the elegant fighters that moved like living creatures through the void. The fleet is ready, Your Majesty, Marcus reported. All ships operating at optimal efficiency. Thank you, Ashereth said. She activated the communication system, her voice reaching every ship in the fleet. Warriors of the Empire, we have received a call for aid from beings who face slavery and death at the hands of the hegemony of Vax. The command center fell silent as every crew member listened. I will not order any of you into this fight, the Empress continued. This is not a battle for territory or resources. This is a battle for the principle that innocent beings should not suffer while others have the power to help them. She paused, letting her words sink in. Any ship that wishes to withdraw from this operation may do so with no shame and no consequences. But for those who choose to stay, know that you fight not just for the Empire, but for justice itself. Marcus watched the tactical display as responses came in from the fleet commanders. One by one, every ship acknowledged their readiness to proceed. Not a single vessel chose to withdraw. Ashereth smiled with pride. Then let us show the galaxy what it means to stand for righteousness. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. The journey to the contested zone took 3 days. During that time, Marcus barely slept as he worked to ensure the fleet was in perfect condition. This would be their greatest test, not just of their combat abilities, but of everything they had built together. On the second day, they received a transmission from Admiral Santiago. The Federation was sending what support they could. A small task force that would provide intelligence and tactical coordination. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that others were willing to stand up for what was right. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace near the besieged colonies, the scene that greeted them was worse than Marcus had imagined. Hegemony ships surrounded 3 different worlds, their massive forms like dark clouds against the stars. Even at this distance, he could see the damage to the planetary surfaces. Cities burning. Infrastructure destroyed. Hegemony fleet consists of 47 vessels, reported the tactical officer. 12 heavy battleships, 23 cruisers, and 12 support vessels. Marcus felt his heart sink. The Draknari fleet was powerful, but they were outnumbered almost 2 to 1. Analysis of their formations? Ashereth asked calmly. Standard hegemony doctrine. Brute force overwhelming. They're not trying to be clever, just crushing anything that resists. Then we'll have to be clever for both sides, the Empress mused. She turned to Marcus. How long can we maintain maximum combat efficiency? Marcus consulted his readings. With current optimization levels, we can run at full power for approximately 6 hours before we start seeing significant performance degradation. And if we push beyond that, we'll start losing systems. Weapons first, then engines, then life support. Ashereth nodded. Then we have 6 hours to end this. The battle that followed would be remembered in military academies for centuries. The Draknari fleet moved like a living thing, their ships coordinating with precision that seemed almost telepathic. They struck fast and hard, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the hegemony's heavier weapons while targeting their most vulnerable systems. Marcus watched from the engineering station as the battle unfolded, making constant adjustments to keep their systems running at peak efficiency. Beside him, Zara monitored damage reports and coordinated repair efforts with a calm professionalism that belied her age. Direct hit on the Stormbreaker, she reported. Hull breach in Sector 7, but containment is holding. Acknowledged, Marcus replied, rerouting power to their damaged sister ship. Tell Captain Vakes that we're compensating for his engine loss. The tide of battle began to turn when the Federation task force arrived. Though small, their ships carried advanced electronic warfare systems that began disrupting hegemony communications. Unable to coordinate effectively, the enemy fleet started making tactical errors. Hegemony command ship is breaking formation, the tactical officer announced. They're trying to escape. Not today, Ashereth said grimly. Strike Leader Vorth, you have permission to pursue. The final phase of the battle was swift and decisive. With their command structure disrupted and their formation broken, the hegemony ships fell one by one to the coordinated assault of the Liberation fleet. When the last enemy vessel finally surrendered, Marcus felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. They had done it. 50,000 beings were free because they had chosen to act. Casualty report? Ashereth requested. Minimal losses, Your Majesty, came the reply. 3 ships with major damage. 17 with minor systems failures. No fatalities. Marcus slumped back in his chair, amazed. Against all odds, they had won a complete victory. Marcus, Zara said softly, look. She was pointing at the main display, which now showed the rescued colonists being evacuated from the planetary surfaces. Ships full of people who had been facing death or enslavement were now heading towards safety and freedom. Among them, Marcus could see the faces of children. Human, Valdari, Centauri, and others. Children who would grow up free because of what they had accomplished here. "This is what we fight for," Ashereth said, noticing his expression. "Not glory, not conquest, but the simple right of innocent beings to live free from fear." In the weeks that followed, news of the Battle of the Outer Colonies spread throughout the galaxy. The David and Goliath victory of the Liberation Fleet against the mighty hegemony became the stuff of legend. More importantly, it inspired others to action. The Galactic Council unanimously passed the Universal Freedom Accords, making slavery illegal throughout all member territories, and establishing joint task forces to enforce the ban. Marcus found himself famous, a reluctant celebrity whose story was told across 100 worlds. The mechanic who took a bullet to save a child and ended up changing the galaxy. But perhaps the greatest change was in the relationship between humans and dragons. What had begun as Marcus's simple act of kindness had grown into a true alliance based on mutual respect and shared values. "You know," Ashereth said to him one evening as they watched Zara practice with a new diagnostic tool, "when I first came to that station, I expected to find enemies who had harmed my child. And, instead, I found family," the Empress said simply. "The galaxy is a better place because of what you chose to do that day, Marcus Chen." Marcus watched Zara work, her young face bright with concentration and joy. She was no longer the frightened hatchling cowering behind cargo containers. She was growing into a brilliant engineer and a compassionate being who would carry forward the lessons they had learned together. "I think," Marcus said quietly, "it's a better place because we all chose to do the right thing." Years later, when historians would write about the Great Liberation and the end of galactic slavery, they would debate the complex political and military factors that made it possible. They would analyze fleet movements and diplomatic negotiations, technological innovations, and strategic decisions. But for Marcus Chen, the explanation was much simpler. Sometimes, someone has to be willing to take a bullet for a scared kid. Everything else follows from there. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change the galaxy.